listening to the Digitally Irresistible podcast, where we cover the optimization of digital technologies and irresistible people. Brought to you by iQor. Each episode features someone who sheds a little more light on the ins and outs of delivering a great employee and customer experience that has a measurable impact on the business. And now, here's today's guest. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Digitally Irresistible podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Borges. Today's featured guest is William Adams. Welcome, William.
Hey, Bernie, how are you? Good to see you again.
Doing great. Great to see you. And thank you for joining me here on this episode of the podcast. I want to talk about something that you have a lot of knowledge and insight in, and that is that it's a quantifiable method that you came up with, and you call it the net happiness score. I love that name, the net happiness score.
Yep.
And it monitors the morale of our call center agents who are working from home. So what I want to discuss with you, William, is how did you come up with it? First of all, what is it? What is the net happiness score? How did you come up with it? And how are we using it at iQor? But first, let's just begin with your introduction. Tell us your backstory.
Absolutely. So, Bernie, I started working with iQor, I want to say probably roughly 9 years ago. And surprisingly, my first day at iQor was in the Philippines. So I onboarded in the States. I moved here quick after. When I moved here initially, I did a lot of work within the financial segment. And then swiftly after, I guess I should say, I moved over to the telecom side of the business. And so I've been here for 9 years. I live locally here in the Philippines, and it has been quite the journey, a learning journey. And even further now, we're all having to kind of dig a little bit deeper to learn how to operate in this post-pandemic world we found ourselves in.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your responsibility, your role.
Yeah. So currently, right now, I manage two big telecom clients across iQor. These clients, actually, the employees that I do manage are here in the Philippines. And one of the clients, we do a little bit of everything, all the different life cycle parts of the customer journey, whether it's collections or chat or retention, care, tech. And the other one is really a business to business function that we do for, again, telecom services. So
Sure.
it's been, like I said, it's been a wild journey here on the telecom side. It's constant adaptation.
I bet. Okay.
Yeah.
So, William, let's get into it. Net happiness score. What is it?
So the net happiness score is essentially, it's a feed off of a podcast that I believe that you guys are going to do after mine, where one of our Andrew Reilly, that works for our company, actually built a very simplified gauge to try to help us understand what our employee sentiment is. And a lot of the employee surveys that we have historically run, they're very long. They're very hard to interpret the data. It takes a little bit of mad science to understand it. And so through the creation of what we call the Moodo-meter, we were able to kind of take that data back on the operations side and really operationalize it to where it's consumable. It helps our frontline determine where and how to action or to engage with our teams. And so essentially, it's very close to what traditionally is the Net Promoter Score. And it is a measure that takes our happy employees, it subtracts out our unhappy employees, and it gives you a net happiness of your workforce. Obviously, just like Net Promoter Score, the lower that percentage is, the higher the opportunity, the higher the percentage is. Again, I'm going to say we also have a good opportunity there to understand best practices and kind of share those across our organization. So the net happiness score is really kind of just an amalgamation of the Moodo-meter data and really operationalizing it.
Okay. By the way, I thought it was moodometer, but we'll
Moodometer, Moodo-meter. It depends where you're from.
Tomato. Yeah. Okay. So now a big sort of influencing factor on even just you coming up with the net happiness score was when COVID happened and we moved thousands of employees to working at home. And was that sort of the background behind coming up with it?
Yeah, that was essentially the springboard. And so, initially when we moved our workforce to work at home last year, really in the March timeframe, Q2 and Q3, essentially, we started to notice that the old tricks didn't work anymore, and really what our employees were looking for changed, and their sentiment changed about what they're looking for from a company. And so we noticed that because we had very high performing, low attrition programs, and they started to they started to see an increase in attrition and a drop in performance. And so, I am no expert. I'll give you that caveat up front. But over the last probably 6 months, I've met with around 600 of our frontline leaders, support folks, and agents to really understand what they're looking for in a company. And so, the net outcome of all those meetings is that our employees are really looking for compassionate leadership. And when I say compassionate leadership, a lot of people kind of confuse that with not managing KPIs and things like that. But it's actually the exact opposite. Compassionate leadership and what our employees are looking for is they're looking for us to create an amazing environment to where we bridge and balance our conversations. We recognize effort. We celebrate the small successes of our employees, and we balance that with an opportunity that we want to coach. And so in the past, I would say that we are all probably pretty guilty of this, is that we are very opportunity centric when we talk to our employees, and it just creates a negative environment. And so as I started to see the pre-pandemic techniques not work in the new world that we found ourselves in, I really kind of hit the pavement and started talking to the employees to see what they want. And I identified that we need a way to measure this and a way to go out and to identify populations, to where we need to adjust the engagement and the practices that we're doing. And it's really to again try to create a best in class employee experience. But we got to have some measure to help us know, number one, where to go, and number two is, are we getting to the end state that we desire to get to, which again is not only to be the biggest BPO, but to be the best BPO and employee experience.
And that's a key point, William. I'm glad you brought that up. And that is, that's a big focus for us at iQor, right? Is just
Yep,
creating a great employee experience. And I
absolutely.
think, your net happiness score is a great way for us to measure that. So why don't you kind of speak to us to like, how's it working? How's it going?
Yeah, you know what? So when I said that we operationalized the data, we built a bunch of workflows and engagement, workflows to where we try to get our teams engaged. And Andrew will kind of get into that during his podcast. But it's going very well. What we have found is that through richer engagements and being able to identify populations to where maybe they haven't adapted to the new world, and we need to spend a little bit more time with those leaders, to kind of train them about the balanced conversations and how we're. If you think about this, Bernie, in a virtual environment, how do you create culture as a company? And it's really that 15 to 20-minute engagement you have with the employee. And so each of our leaders has the ability to build an amazing culture or destroy our culture. And we have to be able to identify who is not adapted to the new world, and to go out and to really engage with those leaders and to train them about how to engage and interact with Icorians in this new world. So, and one of the programs that is doing a very good job at this, we've seen attrition cut in half in the last 90 days, which is an absolute huge win. The sentiment of the employees is skyrocketing. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from the engagements we're doing. And I feel like, just the extra layer of love and compassion in today's world goes such a long way. I mean,
Yeah.
even the very simple things like a 2 to 3 minute investment where you write an employee a message and say, "Hey, Bernie, how's your day today? How are your kids? Or, how you feeling? How was your weekend?" It's for us and the leadership roles is it only takes 3 minutes, but for that employee, it means the world to them that you're
Sure.
communicating with them something outside of, the cornerstone KPIs that we always manage. So we're seeing great success with it. Our employee sentiment is going up. And so, we're doubling down and we're going to keep going, and we're going to find ways to improve what we're doing and move forward.
Great. Great. How are you using the data? How often is it reviewed? How widespread is that data, distributed across the leadership of the organization?
Absolutely. So the data is updated. So the surveys are weekly surveys. And so we use that data each week to help us
Weekly
drive our.
surveys. That's a key point.
It's
You
weekly
you
surveys.
you said that really
Well,
fast. This is
in
weekly.
the weekly. And the important thing is, Bernie, this isn't a 10 question survey. It's a 5 smiley face survey, which is very easy for our agents to
Right.
execute when they come in. It's, it pops up when they log into their system. And so we get that data to our frontline leaders every week updated. Now, in addition to that, we have a team that reaches out based on the data that we get from the surveys, and they're reaching out to a large percentage of our employees, and that's through iQor communication tools or Slack or email or chat or text. And we're getting employee feedback. This is positive feedback, and it's feedback that we need to improve on. And that data is published instantly to where the leaders can go out, they can pull historical data, They can go out and identify what the trends are and really start digging in and leaning in to see what they can do to drive a better experience. So the data is readily available, but they're weekly surveys, which is so impactful because now we don't have to wait for the quarter. We don't have to wait for, bi-yearly surveys. They're coming each week, and it gives us an opportunity to get out, execute, see the numbers change, celebrate success.
Yeah. One of the things I love about it, William, is the elegance of its simplicity. So my next question is, I'm wondering how you're going to answer this question, and that is, what do you see for the future of it, considering that it's so simple, elegantly simple? I mean, do you see it evolving, or do you think it's not broken, don't fix it?
I can't say that I do see it evolving from a process standpoint. I really like the delivery mechanism of the survey. I like the simplicity of the survey. How we consume that information and action it is definitely going to evolve over time,
Okay.
as we continue to append that data with feedback that we're getting, with the check-in information that Andrew's going to rely back or kind of review on the next podcast. So the way that we consume that information is going to evolve over time, and we're going to find better techniques. We're going to have better ways to display and understand the information. But from a mechanism of delivery, I would say that simplicity is really what is driving the value because it's so easy to do. And we get so much feedback just from that one click, right? Like it's 5 surveys if you love your journey at iQor, it's 1 if you don't. And if you select a 1, somebody probably needs to engage with that employee, and it might be a personal issue they have, which is okay. That still falls within our purview in COVID. We need to be there for our employees, not only to support them when they're on a call, but also to support them in their personal lives. A lot of people
Yeah.
are impacted in massive different ways with COVID, and we need to be there, and we need to understand who they are, and we need to execute on it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, again, I love the efficacy, the simplicity, and just the ingenuity behind it. And as you said, on the next episode, he'll get into the sausage factory a little bit and discuss a little bit of
That's right. Yeah,
the details behind that. So that's great.
absolutely.
All right, William, one last question, and that is, when you're not working, William, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah. So, Bernie, this is actually a funny question because when I meet with our different leadership teams and support teams and agents, one of the things that I ask everybody is, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? And we all have hobbies that we used to do. And we all have hobbies that we do now. And so really my hobbies in the pandemic world, which I think is going to be very similar to everybody. I love watching Netflix. I love binge watching Netflix. I love to spend time with my family. And on the occasion, I like to ride motorcycles, but that's becoming very hard to do in today's environment. So I'd say my key hobbies are spending time with my family and binge watching series on Netflix. They are an amazing company that always comes out with new series every week. And so that has kept me extremely busy.
Fantastic. Well, you're in good company. A lot of us are doing that. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on this episode of the Digitally Irresistible podcast, and sharing your backstory and the Net Happiness Score, where it came from, and how we're using it. It's ingenious. Again, both in its simplicity and in its efficacy as well. So, thank you so much, William.
You are absolutely welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Digitally Irresistible podcast, where we cover the optimization of digital technologies and irresistible people, delivering a great employee and customer experience that has a measurable impact on the business. Brought to you by iQor. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss future episodes.